Trustees, this is Dr. Bostic, and I am trying to give you a small briefing on the technology needs of the district from our technology director, George Rodriguez. He gave us a briefing. He gave me a briefing. He gave cabinet a briefing on what the technology needs were. So what we do is whenever someone comes in new to a position, one of the things I ask them to do is to really do a full assessment or kind of a needs assessment of what they actually see when they take over a position. And that is really from principals to technology directors or anyone, so we can find out what the roadmap is ahead, or at least be able to assess what's really wrong. And so what he did was he did that and he completed it, and then he brought back some needs, and some of them were kind of mission critical. So here's some of the things that he brought up, and he has it titled immediate needs because they really are. So the first one was, after looking at his assessment pages and what all was available and what all we could do, he came up with probably about a little over $4 million worth of needs. And that is worst case scenario. What he said, and that's not in our presentation today, is that basically if you were to replace everything that you had right now, it was going to cost you a little over $4 million. But in his with his expertise, his thought was, well, first of all, you don't need all of those things. Some of the things that you would replace are have long since been out of date, and we really don't even need to have some of those. Some of those other things that are in this presentation really are things we need to have. The first one was the intercom paging and emergency system. And what we found out after doing and looking at the intercom paging and emergency system was that basically we have a system that is not connected. So between the intermediate, the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, we have paging. We have individual intercoms and paging systems that are not connected. So if there's an emergency, and has been, as you know, at the campus or anywhere in Houston, we can't really get anything out to everybody at one time. We've got to call somebody or go back to one another, and thank God we've been able to get around it without that, but that is one of our challenges. The other mission critical piece that he brought up was servers and the age of your servers, and we'll see that a little later in the presentation. And then finally, student computers that he brought up as well. The first one was the intercom paging emergency system. And what he brought up was, as we get into that, first, number one, the equipment is starting to fail. The system is from 1999. So if you think about that, it's 2018. So if you did a little quick math, your system's about 20 years old. So let's go back with the 8-track, and that's kind of where we are. So some things are still working, but they've kind of patched them together. But as I mentioned, none of them are together. Number two, paging systems are not connected with each other. Time's not synced. So, for example, if you have a class in the middle school right now, the bell schedule, the middle school bell schedule and the high school bell schedule are tied together. However, the middle school bell schedule isn't synced, and it won't sync because of the age of the systems. It'll be about 3 minutes later, so you'll have a kid who's coming to class, and they'll be late to class even though they're on time because the bell didn't ring till 3 minutes later or before. 3, replacement parts are scarce or not manufactured anymore. Well, when you have a 20-year-old system, especially as it deals with something that's technological or electronic, you could see where you could have some items that they just don't make anymore, guys. It's a lot like even your cars that you drive today. I don't know that any one of us has a 20-year-old vehicle that we drive and we work with every day. And I'm not saying that this is a car. I'm saying this is a paging system and an emergency intercom system. But what I am saying is there's a lot of value in the system sold. We can't purchase parts for it anymore, or even and patching it together is not working as much. And then finally, 4 is safety and security concerns. We know that when we had a emergency drill that we did not too long ago, that when we had a lockdown, we had Missouri City Police who needed to secure the area, that we had kids in the field house who couldn't hear the intercom and the paging system, had no idea. There are no paging systems in the administration building or any of the outside buildings that are not connected to the main building itself. There is a intercom in the intermediate, but like I said, the systems are not synced or paged together. So that's the real reason to replace that. Right now, this is what runs the intercom system. I want you to pay particular attention to this right here. Our intercom and electronic system for paging and the emergency for our school district runs on a Windows 2000 computer. Once again, I want to point to you that this is 2018, and in a few months it's going to be 2019. So this system has been for many years end of life. It's 20 years old, almost 20 years old. It's 18, exactly. 18 years old, and that's what actually runs our intercom system that we have today. And so there is no support for it. Windows and Microsoft don't give any support for that. But I think that's a pretty good visual to let us know where we are. And maybe that's a little better picture of it. The recommended PA system that he has recommended for us does provide National Weather Service integration. That also will help us with lightning strikes when we're out there on the field with our kiddos, and we have to stop the football game as we did on Friday night. Then this would give us that integrated system, and it would give those alerts out to our cell phones and our computers and laptops and email systems, whether they were in the district or not, as long as they had those district emails. Centralized management. So if we had to have an override from the administration building out there and say that there was an emergency that came in for some reason, we could get an emergency out. Right now, I have zero connection with the campuses for any emergency system. But this would let them do it. Plus, it would still give them the individuality or autonomy between each campus to still go ahead and do their own announcements and PA systems as they are. This just basically gives us the ability to have an override if there's an emergency in the district to go ahead and lock the district down. This also would give us some text-to-speech announcements where you could have several of those announcements kind of pre-typed in already. So if there was an override needed or emergency systems already or messages that we needed to have, we could have those kind of pre-typed in, and an Alexa-type voice would come over the intercom and give that message out. So it would already be pre-recorded. Additional installation of speakers, we would have to add additional speakers. Right now we have analog speakers, so this would give digital speakers that would go along with the system. Now, there is an option for us to go ahead and use some of our old speakers that are out there. The only real challenge with using some analog speakers along with digital speakers are, once again, they're different systems, and you probably would end up having to replace those analog speakers at a later date anyway, but they would work at least as we would start. And then finally, addressing safety and security concerns. This system also has the ability to actually, with additional hardware, which would not be in the first quote, with additional hardware, could actually lock the building down, lock all those buildings down because of this one centralized piece. And so he'll probably bring that up as well. There's a couple estimated cost options for the board to take a look at and really just kind of get your direction on what you'd like to do. But of course, because it deals with safety, I believe, and I'd like to be able to say on record, is not something that really should wait. If we just did option one, which is minimal, we'd replace the headers. That's $200,000. That's just the PA system head boxes in each of the schools. That's all that would do. But if we did the option two, which is the minimum option that Director Rodriguez said that we should go with, if we couldn't do the option three, he said this is the least the one that he would recommend if we couldn't do option three, is number two, which is to add speakers and address the security and safety concerns. And that's at least tying those systems together using what we have. But the only thing it'd leave out is it wouldn't have full speaker replacement. We try to integrate the speakers that we have, and whenever they go out, then I guess we'd address those. And while we're waiting to address those, then those would be still security concerns. Option three is really a complete system, which would be one that I'd recommend. It's definitely one that he's recommended too. It adds all new speakers, and it is a complete solution, a true turnkey solution that provides teachers with the emergency response systems that they need in the classroom, as well as putting that information out to computers and out to your individual cell phones so people have what they need if we have a safety or security concern up there. Servers. Servers was the next piece that he brought up for us. And then when you think about servers, you may say to yourself, so what in the world is really all the server business about? Well, first of all, pretty much everything we have here in the school district runs on a computer or runs on a server. Long time ago, when we didn't really have a bunch of servers out there, things would run off of individual computers, a lot like that Windows 2000 picture that you got to see a little bit earlier. And those were systems that were kind of standalone systems that might not be connected to the internet, but also they didn't get updated. And if they were connected to the internet, like that Windows 2000 system, then it can't protect against threats or anything else like that. It won't even take an update anymore from Microsoft because it's what we call end of life. So servers, that's what we're going to be talking about, is some end of life stuff. So we can't really talk so much about what we haven't done except for just really to reflect on, hey, here's where our situation stands. Because when I got here 5 years ago, we did what we could with what we had. But we didn't have a bond issue. And our previous boards before us had done the right thing for what they had during this time. What I asked George to put together for us was kind of a phased-in plan on how we need to address some of these things we have with servers. Here's what we know about our servers up to date, that all of them are at the end of life, which means that every server that we have cannot take a patch from Microsoft anymore because of their age. 2, they're running low on storage, and that's because of their age. And then back when we purchased them, as you'll see the age of the servers, that they had more than adequate storage back then. But of course, the school district's gotten bigger since, when I give you the years, it's gotten bigger than what it was several years ago when they were purchased. Reduce inefficiencies, power consumption, slowness. You all may have seen where you've had some challenges with email and power outages where power in the district goes out and comes back on. Well, we call that load balancing. And so some of that load balance has been a problem. In fact, I literally sat here and watched them use a calculator to estimate and calculate load balance and to try to change the load balance on the servers each day to try to keep them operational. 4, reducing complexity, because we have different kinds of servers that are on our system. We don't just have one kind. So pretty much as we would have change after change with the folks who would bring in and make recommendations, they'd bring in new servers and bring in a part of one, a part of something else. And then 5, security. So when we don't get regular updates and patches, and that's even on your own personal devices, it opens you up to a lot of security concerns. So from the phishing that's happened all throughout the school district and all over the United States, as well as access to people's personal information, people can access those things quite a bit easier when you don't have a system that's patched up or won't even accept a patch, and that's our case. So everything that we can patch, we've patched already, but there's some, like I said, that are end of life that Microsoft doesn't even make a patch for. So server refresh cycle is one of the things that he talked about, which was that he wanted to make sure that whenever we did this work, or he put it out to him, and it's something that I recommended he bring forward, that we had a refresh cycle. And that unlike to learn from some of the lessons of the past, instead of asking that we do everything maybe at once, instead to kind of stagger not only how it's brought in, stagger the warranty, but also stagger how they're brought in. And so for the refresh cycle, you can put warranties on each of the systems. The recommendation is, of course, to have somewhere between at least 5 years, which is satisfactory. Because if we have anything past that warranty, then we end up getting third-party sites and things like that to help support us. And that's really where we are right now, because we have machines that they won't even give an extended warranty to, and even the third-party folks won't even warranty them anymore or even actually work on them. So we're just working on them as we have them because they won't accept a patch, and the warranty group folks will not warranty the machine. So if they go down, they go down. So we talked about the age of systems, and you saw that if I go a slide back, that 7 years was unsatisfactory for warranty and the refresh cycle. The support cost goes up exponentially to 400%. And that just really means that we have a lot of man hours and women hours that are spent on those from technology professionals to work on the machines and to keep them up and operating so the district stays up and operating. And that's what we're doing right now, putting a lot of money into that. Right now, you'll notice you have one server that is less than 7 years old, which means that pretty much everything we have, even with the warranty expiration date, the warranties have even gotten past the extended warranty, past the extended warranty. That after they finish the extended warranty, they can't even buy another third-party warranty for that system. And so his plan and the estimate is, so the minimal cost in just replacing the servers alone with just a basic 5-year warranty is about $246,000. Well, that's good stuff, because that would at least make sure that if any one of the servers that we have right now goes down, that we would have a server that could actually keep the systems up and running for the school district with the 5-year warranty. That would help us kind of keep going. Now, what we don't have is on-site backup and disaster recovery. Many of you will remember not long ago we had Hurricane Harvey, and if we had on-site backup or disaster recovery off-site in another place, we could recover the system whenever we needed to. If we would have had a flood, or this place would have flooded, then we would have had, or if the tornado would have hit it, thank God it didn't tear anything up, we would have been lost without, and had a very difficult time trying to rebuild our database of student names, critical data that we have with kids and staff members, and salary information, all of that stuff we'd have a challenge with. So option 2 is what I call best of breed option. That provides on-site backup and disaster recovery, and that's about $310,000 for that. Now, the way that George talked about doing this was basically to replace them, and maybe not necessarily having to do everything all at once, even though you could, was doing at least two at a time, and then after 3 years, on year 4, you'd replace another 2, and then year 5, you'd replace the last server in the backup node. And that would give it, because our entire district runs off of about 5 servers and 1 backup server. And then you get to trade in, if we use kind of that warranty cycle, you'd get to trade in the servers that we had that were not so old, and be able to get some money back, and we'd be able to reinvest the dollars back into buying a new server. How about student lab computers? Student lab computers are items that also come into mind. As he talked about that, here's what he brought up after doing kind of his needs assessment. Number 1, the computers that we have right now are unreliable. 84% of students are affected by an unreliable lab computers for STAR, TELPAS, STAR, and ALT2. And what happens is, because so many of our tests now are online, and if you think about when those servers and computers were bought for this district, we didn't have so many tests that you had to have online. Now you take TELPAS and some of those STAR tests all online, and we have to go into computer labs. But when you look at the age of the system, you see that the systems are so old, or the computer labs are so old, that's when our things start to crash, and they're crashing already. Incompatibility with our vision. Let's just look at what our vision is. We say we're a STEM district, or we plan to be one. Our PCs don't meet the requirements for most new programs. I'll be honest with you and say most current programs. So we're running behind. We did a great job with purchasing PCs for teachers, and those are up to date. However, the student laptops or the student computers and the computer labs are not there, and that's where we do most of our testing and that kind of stuff, so we need to get there. 82% of lab computers are from 2007 to 2011. So if you look at it, some of our oldest are over 11 years old, and our newest is still 7 years old. And so if you think of any PC at your house that is at least 7 years old, does it still work? Yes, I left a little silence there because I bet you have an answer, and it probably is it doesn't. And so that's kind of what the challenge is. So we've kind of bandaged those and kept them together, and they are working, but they do have power outages where they'll shut down, auto shut down on their own and start back up, especially in your elementary and high school labs where they have the most testing right now. No computer lab standardization. So over the years, as we've been here, and a good bit of this was prior to any of us being on the board or in administration, we've got, some Lenovo's, some IBM's, and had some Dell's and some HP's and some Macs. So you've kind of got a few of a lot of several different brands. And so there's no continuity, and not only in brands, but also in trying to support them when they begin to break down. So here's just an overview of basically what you have in there. You'll see that the majority of your systems are at 290 all the way back, are HP 6200s, HP DC 5800s. Those are purchased in 2008. They're 10 years old. And the Dell Optiplex, you had 10 of those. Those are 07, those are 11. But you do have some Macs. The Macs are still pretty strong. You've got 6 of those, but you don't have enough for even a Mac lab, and you need about 25 because you need a classroom set. So you could still work probably with about 19 of those. These Dell Optiplex 2014s, you got 64 of those. That's where they spend most of their time testing right now, and that gives you some room, but they're still 2014, so they're 4 years old. So most of these computers, PCs, past about 3 to 5 years, they get to their end of life at about 5. And so if it's 2014, it'll be 2019 in a couple months. So the recommended computers he's got are an all-in-one construction for both platforms, the Mac and PC version. Both with optimal screens, kind of all-in-one computers, so we can kind of get the best of breed for our kids. Wireless capable, so they'd be able to operate on Wi-Fi with not a bunch of cables all day. And then enough processing speed to not only do the testing that is required, but our robotics and some of the things we say that we want to do from coding as a district. So his recommended computers that he brought to our attention are the Dell Optiplex 7460. That's an all-in-one Infinity Edge screen, which means the screen goes to the edge. And then the iMac 27-inch, which will help us do with the Mac Lab piece and with the Dell Optiplex piece. Will help us do the computer lab plus like I said, a Mac Lab, especially with the middle school working towards becoming an Apple distinguished school. The new one and our current one, since you have 90% of your teachers who are all Apple teachers in middle school, they've taken time out and taken tests to become Apple teachers, as I have, then they would be able to utilize the tools not only in the classroom with the iPads that we just purchased for students, the one-to-one, but also to do what they need to do for testing in the lab. So here's the phase rollout. So he was looking at 2019, at least taking care of the high school and the elementary, which is about $215,000, because those are the oldest computers, and they have probably the largest amount of stress on them too, because people are coming in to use them because they have to use them for test. And we don't have many of our computers that can handle the STAR test or the tail pass when they're getting them out there. Phase 2, of course, is the new middle school and the intermediate. And we know that the intermediate is going to change into the new early childhood primary, if you will. And then the primary, which is currently in the elementary, possibly doing it last. So our current primary, which will become part of the large overall elementary, looking at doing that last, because that's where our newest computers for the elementary are. They're in the primary school. So in summary, here's what they need. They've got to replace the outdated infrastructure and educational equipment for new and more state-of-the-art technology, because your current equipment is unreliable and it does pose cyber and physical safety concerns with the 3 options that we brought to you. So he does propose the new paging, intercom, and emergency system. He does propose new servers and new student lab computers, and that's just to get us to a standard area to where we don't we don't fall off on some of our mission critical items that we have to get done. I want to thank you for your time today. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or President Caldwell, or even Director George Rodriguez if you'd like. And he can be reached at jrodriguez@staffordmsd.org. And of course, you know how to reach Chris and myself. Thanks. Have a good one.